Okay, and I believe we are live.
All right.
So, if that is indeed the case, welcome everybody to our Tuesday afternoon live stream. This week, I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and with me is the lovely and talented Angie Atkinson. So, Angie, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And if you guys are new here, this is a live stream that Angie and I try to do every Tuesday around 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It goes for about an hour and we alternate channels. So next week we'll be over on Angie's channel, which is Angie Atkinson over on YouTube. If you want to be notified of these live streams, you can either subscribe to both of our YouTube channels or you can text Dana Live to the number 22999. Or Angie, what is your number again?
It's Angie Live, all one word, 233222.
Okay, so Angie Live 33222.
Correct.
Okay, good deal. So, with that said, where we left off last week, we said that we would discuss the concept of magical thinking
Mm-hmm.
this week. So, um, I guess, should we just jump into that?
Let's do it.
Okay, good deal.
Mhm.
Uh, okay, well, I guess in short, magical thinking, it's something that is easy to slip into. So I think that's first and foremost um, something that people should just be aware of. Like I said, it's easy to slip into, it's easy to engage in. And what's so scary about it is it can feel like logical thinking.
Mhm.
And what magical thinking is, it's basically the misattribution of our thoughts, feelings, and actions on the outside world.
Mhm.
So, how that plays out, it's confusing causation and correlation. Um, so, for example, rituals would be an example of magical thinking. So, let's say if a person thinks, okay, like you see this with obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay, if I turn the light switch on and off 5 times, I have to do that or else I'm going to get in a car accident. And then they turn the light switch on and off 5 times, they don't get in a car accident. And that further reinforces that belief of, okay, it was this ritual that protected me.
Mm.
Um, but that's not the case. So those two events aren't connected, but it can seem like they are. And this happens across the board. This type of magical thinking we see with, like I said, we see it with everybody, ourselves included. Or at least I should speak for myself included.
Oh,
I've
me too.
definitely think, okay, I've
Yeah.
definitely engaged in it. Um,
It's fun sometimes when it's harmless.
yeah,
Santa Claus.
yeah. And I would say, um, the only thing that makes it harmless is if people realize that it's not real.
Right. Right.
It's if people are thinking, okay, well, it's okay to engage in this behavior because it makes me feel safe or whatnot. It's always going to be harmful if people think it works. Um,
Yeah.
it's gonna
Yeah.
because that it's gonna snowball into more and more illogical behavior, and it will eventually cause problems. So, do you have some examples of magical thinking that you've seen or heard about from people in your community?
Yeah, I mean, there are, some of the things, I guess you make a valid point. I guess it depends on the situation. Like, so if, for example, let's see, if there's a situation where you have a narcissist, maybe, if that's where we're going with this, who says that, they, I don't know, to me, I think this kind of falls under different things when we're getting into the narcissism thing. But I think the term magical thinking in this light is referring to situations where, you know a person's I'm having a hard time trying to say what trying to say without sounding like an idiot, or go too far too deep. If a person is in a situation where they think, you know if I don't wear that shirt, and that that team's going to lose, and then somebody doesn't wash the shirt for them, let's say, then
Hmm.
maybe, and then they have a problem with the way that the person's, um, the fact that you lost the shirt, you ripped the shirt, you didn't wash the shirt, I can't wear the shirt. Now the team lost, it's all your fault. And so you cost us the World Series, let's say. I
Right.
don't know. I think that's how it would be used in an abuse situation, right? Outside of that, you have a super chat. Do you want to take that before it goes away?
Sure. It's from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says, stay positive, still going strong.
Right on, Jonathan.
Yes, we appreciate the super chat and the words of encouragement.
Indeed. Yes. Sorry. Anyway, I think my bottom line was, I also think, we could say that prayer is magical thinking, and we could say that affirmations are magical thinking, but I guess only in some, because if we don't believe it works, then it doesn't work, right? So, you know what I mean? It depending on who we are, I guess. But I think that's the way that it works. But I think some people, for example, will, like, you've got a lot of toxic law of attraction gurus out there, or gurus in general, and they'll say, well, if you do this and this and this, then you will definitely, if you send me $20,000, you will become a millionaire, or whatever. That's magical thinking, because they don't tell them how they have to do all this work to get to that point. They just say they'll just fall right into your lap. And that kind of stuff is abusively magical and incorrect. Sorry, I'm all over the place today. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
No, that's okay. Well, this is going to be controversial, but we can even back up to prayer. So something like that, there are limits there, right? So prayers, casting spells, doing these things, trying to control outside forces is kind of the crux of that.
Yes.
So you see this a lot. Okay, well, and people tend to engage in this kind of magical thinking when there's not much. It's a way to feel in control of our environment, and I know that might seem really offensive to some people, but that's kind of where that boils down to. Of, well, there's not much else we can do except to pray, and it does feel good, and that's okay to. To do that. But it's when it becomes dangerous is when people think, well, I'm going to pray instead of seeking medical treatment.
There it is. Yes.
Okay. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you start stacking on illogical thoughts with illogical thoughts, so it's, and you see this in some extreme religions where it's, okay, I'm going to pray about this certain thing. Well, with cults, for example, right? So this belief system of, we're going to take certain actions, and because we believe the world is going to end. Okay.
Right.
So we're going to take certain actions to try to prevent this. And then, or we're going to just take certain actions because we believe the world is going to end. Then if the world doesn't end, then we're going to change our belief. So you get into some cognitive dissonance there, where we change the belief to match the reality. So now it's, well, we prevented the world from ending because of our actions. You see something similar, and not so much with prayer, but it kind of tends to go two ways of, I'm going to pray for a certain outcome. I'm going to pray for little Johnny to get better. Yeah. Right. And if little Johnny gets better, then okay, it's because we all prayed. Right. And if little Johnny doesn't get better, then it's the thought of, well, God works in mysterious ways.
Yes.
So
yeah.
And that, that can be,
it takes the responsibility.
Right. Where I see this with people that have been impacted by abuse is back to kind of the law of attraction thing, is thinking, okay, well, if they stumble into law of attraction stuff, okay, well, I attract what I manifest in my life is what I attract. And if I want to change what I attract, I need to change my vibration. And so I'm going to start doing things to kind of change my vibration. And I have many issues with law of attraction stuff, but one of them is this concept that if you start seeing things that are within the same range of what you're trying to manifest. So a good example is, if I'm trying to manifest $1 million, let's say, then any evidence of money if I find a dime on the street or a dollar in my pocket, or I get a rebate check that I wasn't expecting, then that's all proof that that $1 million is on its way to me. And this is where it can seem very real of, well, this is just weird. More and more money keeps showing up. I can't explain this. But the reality is it's just that our attention is set to scan for evidence of our desire to
Mhm.
success. This, and where it gets problematic is when people go all in on this belief, thinking, okay, $1 million is coming my way. I'm going to quit my job,
Yep.
or I'm going to take some sort of impulsive or dangerous, financially dangerous decisions because they think something is,
Right.
that
I
they're
think it's all
manifesting.
about balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I have to say, I do see value in keeping your vibrations as positive as possible and focusing on what you want and not what you don't want as much as possible. But sometimes you have to deal with the thing you don't want, like the damn bills or the job or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You can't just, oh, well, I'm getting $1 million, so quit your job. That doesn't work. That's not logical. I mean, you still have
Right.
to be logical. So I think, yeah, I think there's a happy medium. And I think when someone, and you're right, and this is what a lot of, like I was saying, a lot of these gurus teach, that you literally could quit your job because you have to be that sure. I've seen people literally say that
Mhm.
on on videos about the law of attraction. Like, you're going to get what you want. You have to know it so hard that you're going to quit your job or whatever. That's ridiculous. It's just, and you're
Yeah.
right. That's where it becomes harmful, because the idea of keeping yourself in a positive, energetic space does work, but you can't only do that. You have to like actually try to, or at least
Right.
until you do have it fall into your lap, be prepared to continue to work if you need to look at it that way, So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I call it inspired action. You can't expect to attract anything without inspired action. It's,
Yes,
yeah,
I agree.
because
Well,
yeah.
and I think it's always important to have healthy boundaries no matter what. So another way I've seen this kind of backfire big time is people will have this intention of finding a good partner, and they'll
Mhm.
get very clear about what they're looking for. Oh, I want
Yeah.
this person to look a certain way, to have certain hobbies, to whatnot.
Mhm.
And if that person, if they're engaging in this belief that they are so powerful that they can manifest this, then
Mhm.
if a person kind of meeting that description comes along, then, and I've seen this time and again, they're very quick to drop boundaries, thinking, well, I don't want to question this manifestation, because if I do, then the universe will pull it back.
Mm.
And I've seen people get in all kinds of, get married very quickly, get
Mhm.
involved in, especially very sociopathic, superficially charming people can do a great job of pretending to be everything that their target is needing or wanting.
Mm.
And of course, for the target, they're feeling like they've found this amazing ideal relationship when it's not. And they haven't realized that yet, because it just takes time sometimes to
Mm.
realize that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
No doubt.
interesting stuff. I
It's
guess, should we
fascinating.
hop into the chat? We're getting
Yeah. People
some,
coming
okay.
in. Let's see here. Huh. Okay. Oh, thank you, helpful mom. And Jack. Okay. Let's see here.
Yeah, see, Rocco says, can we go through what we experienced? Sure. Do you have anything in particular that you would like to discuss?
Yeah. Let us know. Questions are, we're open for them, y'all.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh, it looks like Jack says he has been with a new girlfriend for a few months, which I was going to be excited about until he said the last red flag I heard was her saying she's crazy. I picked up a lot of subtle suggestive comments. I broke up with her today. It's never easy. So I'm sorry about that, Jack. He's a long time, you know,
Mhm.
group member. Let's see here. And he says it's growth, though. He doesn't want someone like that in his life, saving the place for someone more. Well, we do now.
Yeah.
Right on. Do you have
Yeah.
one for us?
I do. Michelle says, imagining that life will go the way you want if you do the right things. That has been a hang up for me.
Mm.
Yes. And that's called the just world fallacy. And it's exactly that. It's thinking, well, um, kind of good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, and that the world is kind of this fair and just place.
Mm.
And the reality is that it's not.
Right.
Um, I would say it
I,
is more often than not, but
yeah.
sometimes good things do happen to bad people, and sometimes
Mhm.
really awful things happen to good people.
It's true. Yeah. I know someone who, anyway, someone that I know thinks that at any time something goes wrong in this person's life, they think it's because of something they did in a past life, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, again, I'm not going to touch on any specific religious things or anything, but I do think that's an unhealthy way to see things. Like you didn't even do anything, and yet it must be because of some karma from a past life, which, maybe, I mean, I don't know anything, but personally, I think that's not a great way to, it can't be very healthy for you emotionally to walk around always thinking that you're uh, something that happened in a past life. I mean, I love to think about that stuff in theory, but in reality, it's unhealthy if you go crazy with it, right?
Right.
I Yeah. Anyway.
Right. And it can really attribute to a lot of unnecessary blame and guilt and shame. Again, this can be taken to this whole idea of, um, if good things only happen to, if things only happen to us according to our vibration, right? Like law of attraction kind of stuff, then where the logic in this falls apart is, okay, well, then what happens when good things happen to bad people or bad things happen to good people, right? And you'll see kind of that doubling down in that cognitive dissonance, the mental gymnastics that come with that, trying to soothe that over of, oh, well, it must just be it's some other vibration. Maybe it's the vibration that from a past life, maybe it's a vibration that they were born into or whatever. And, um, for those that believe in that, if you have a child, if you have a baby that's born with leukemia, do you know what I mean? If a parent's believing that it's somehow a vibrational thing, then it can cause a lot of guilt and shame and this hyper level of accountability of, oh my gosh, I somehow did this to my baby. And that's where it's just heartbreaking. So, oh, Angie,
Yes.
oh, there you go.
Yeah, I see that now. And also, they would think that they were somehow responsible for fixing it, and they might do crazy things instead of just, going to the doctors and the appropriate people. I've seen that a lot, where they would, people will do, like, I'm not trying to talk about anyone's children's death, but there's a certain star that we could probably all think of if we thought of movies such as Grease and, like, that movie with the
Mm,
big angel Michael. Uh,
mhm.
anyway, and unfortunately, his son died because he and his wife believed so strongly in the Scientology thing, and they wouldn't give him like a simple antibiotic or whatever. And to me, that was an example of what we're talking about here. Not that I'm saying anything negative about him as a person, or his wife or anyone else. I'm just saying, to put your child in a position to, you could just get an injection and not die seems,
Mhm.
anyway,
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Um, let's see. Let's hop into the chat here.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Abbott
Yep.
says we can use life struggles to grow internally. Maybe that's why we are here, to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And
Yeah.
something really quick I wanted to add about the law of attraction thing. I think that it's not just law of attraction, but the magical thinking thing, right? I think the best advice that I have ever given anyone, and that I don't know if I read it somewhere or what, but basically, I'm sure I read it somewhere. But what it came down to is only focus on what you can control or affect. Only worry about something until that you can change. Otherwise, you shouldn't worry at all. And when that, for me, that was what I mean is, you can't even, if you can't really affect things that you can't affect, right? So
Right.
given the law of attraction thing would, for some people who don't like dig in and really try to understand what people are saying, they might think that, well, I can make my ex come back to me, or I can make
Mm.
whatever
Mhm.
happen like that. And that's not true. And I think that's the thing people also misunderstand. They'll think, well, I attracted this person to me. And maybe you did, but not against their will. You know what I mean? Like in that, I don't know. Do you understand what I mean? Like you can't, with the law of attraction per se, you can't change another person, or you can't, affect something that you can't otherwise affect, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's important. The parts of law of attraction that we can prove
Mhm.
that are valid have to do with everything that you're saying, like setting the intention. And I think so much of success in life, or getting what we're desiring in life, is just setting that intention. Most
Mhm.
people don't even get that far. And it's easy. It's easy. Life happens. Kids, bills, sickness,
Mhm.
responsibility. These things kind of get in the way, and it's easy to get carried away just in the doings of life.
Yep.
And then you kind of wake up one day and you're like, gosh, I'm so far, my life is so far off track of where I was hoping it would be. And um, but it really helps to have kind of this idea of where do we want to go?
Oh,
And then,
absolutely.
yeah, and then to take that action towards making that happen, and realize, that it's oftentimes, I think anything is going to take effort and, um, determination.
Mhm.
So
No doubt.
yeah, but you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. The problems with people trying to kind of get their ex back, or kind of manifesting, these kinds of things. I just it's a problem. Where you see kind of magical thinking with narcissists, especially if you've got some like delusional thinking already that's
Mhm.
present,
No doubt. Yeah, and
is
in fact, it's defined as delusional thinking. I mean, sorry,
Mhm.
go on.
Well, and really um, a belief without evidence isn't hope, and it's not optimism, it's delusion.
Yeah.
So I don't think most people realize kind of that is the definition of what a delusion is. So no matter how much evidence you give a person to the contrary of this isn't real, if they keep doubling down on no, 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 this is real, and then they end up resorting to, well, it's just real because I feel it's real, then,
I mean, that's the
you know,
basis of religion. I'm so sorry.
yeah, well, I
I
agree.
mean,
And
yeah.
I think that's
Mhm.
why many wars have been fought and millions of people have died,
Yeah.
because our beliefs are powerful stuff. And
Mhm.
um, something can feel true and not necessarily be true.
Right.
And that can be hard to parse out. And especially when you get ego kind of wrapped up in it, where there's this thinking of, um, you've got one group that's right and one group that's wrong.
Mhm.
And if their belief system is such that it has to be only one, like there's no other room for other belief systems, that's when big time problems happen. So, um, but you see
Absolutely.
with narcissists, in terms of a lot of relationships that I think people encounter in our community, it's um, um, very grandiose thinking. And kind of, we were joking last time, where you might have a narcissist claiming, I'm a wizard, I'm all powerful, right? I know what you're thinking, I'm always there, blah blah blah. And the reality is they aren't. um
And
any of
sometimes
these
they'll even tell you what you're thinking.
they want to tell you that it's just for power and control, and they
Yeah.
might think that they know exactly what you're thinking, but really they're projecting all of their thoughts onto you. So
Mhm.
it's um you know yeah. Okay, let's see, let's jump into the chat here.
Yes. Okay. There's a lot of talking, not a lot of questions that I'm saying, okay, here's one. Okay,
Mhm.
nope. Oop, I missed it. It just broke by. There it goes. Let's see. Um, apparently there was a question from Rocio. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, but she said something about, did anyone in chat get arrested? I did, and it was horrible. Long story short, he pressed charges on an accident scratch. I have
Mm,
not been arrested personally, but I know a lot of people who have, well, Tracy Malone here on YouTube, she tells the story of, she told the story on my channel one time about how she was literally arrested by her ex because she was trying to she didn't even know that he had another woman or something, but he showed up, and I can't remember the exact thing, but it was, she showed up at the same party they did and he had her arrested and or something. I don't know. But it was not like she was actually doing anything to hurt anyone. That was the point. So,
Yep. I have a good friend of mine who's going through a divorce with this guy who is an absolute narcissist. And um, oh God, the level of indifference, just cruel, calloused, cold indifference is shocking. He doesn't necessarily do things that are provoking. It's just he doesn't care, and it's all about him all the time. And um, he doesn't care who he hurts. He doesn't care who his selfishness hurts. And this has led to many a physical fight between them because it sends her into orbit because he does all kinds of, awful, ridiculous things, and she just loses her cool, understandably so. I think any sane person has their breaking point. And I know if I was in her shoes, I would be reacting the exact same way. And that's what's so scary is you can get people that are otherwise like reasonable, like well-adjusted, sane people in these absolutely insane, infuriating situations, and you can wind up in jail. And I called the police on them one time. This was years ago because I was terrified she was going to kill him. And
wow.
so uh, because his behavior was just so outrageous and he was so indifferent. And, she was wanting answers, wanting an apology, wanting all these things. And he just didn't care. And that was, it was just sending her into orbit. So, and this last time he actually filed for divorce on her, and he's the one that's claiming she's abusive. But their relationship, I think, is a great example of that reactive abuse. Because it's just been nothing but psychological and emotional abuse their whole marriage. And, and then she just is very dysregulated because of that. And scary, dangerous, frustrating. My heart starts racing even thinking about it. I just get so, it's so hard to watch somebody you care about in this situation like this. Cause
Yeah. Like, do you ever be like, don't you know what I do? Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I totally get that. So I see this conversation that's interesting happening here, where Darlene mentions that some religions use cult tactics. And like we talked about it earlier, and then, oh, wait a minute. Okay. And then, sorry, there was something else, but it's been handled. Anyway, but then Darlene said, or then Waterfall said, well, okay, wait a minute. Waterfall said all religions use cult tactics. Oh, I thought they said, okay. And then Darlene says some religions do, not all. And then Waterfall says, yeah, I disagree. So, I mean, what do you think about that? Do you want to touch on that at all?
I think any belief system that is so polarized that either you believe what we believe or you're going to be
wrong.
Not only wrong, but like severely punished. And people are taking action out of fear of consequences. Whenever there's fear, obligation, or guilt in play, it's manipulation. And I just personally don't believe that God is involved in any of that. I think that's man's interpretation of things. And I think for that reason, when there's that threat of you either do this or you go to hell, or you need to act according this way, or there's eternal suffering and damnation, I don't agree with that. I just don't. To me, that just doesn't resonate. I think if there is a God, that it wouldn't have anything to do with doctrine like that, because it's manipulative and in a slippery slope into the underdeveloped ego of human beings that we're all prone to. And it's a slippery slope into power and control of human beings over others. And I just think God would know that, and God wouldn't have any part of that. So
well, and the whole, like the Crusades, for example, you know, it's just evidence. We know that at least, okay, I shouldn't say that. Some scholars suggest that the formation of the initial churches were the first organized religions were to literally control people and their bad behavior. I mean, I'm just saying, but
Mhm.
that's irrelevant to any of that. So, but Changing My Life says, I love what you were talking about here because I really feel like this thinking is really dangerous. And even places like AA encourage leaving it to your higher power. You know, and look, I try really hard to never, I don't want to offend or upset anyone because your beliefs are your own and I fully respect whatever those are. And I would never directly, religiously speaking, I would never go against anyone's beliefs unless they were physically hurting another person because of them or whatever, or even emotionally that way, excessively. But I think it's really important, and I agree with, on a personal level, I sort of agree with exactly what you said, Dana. But I do feel like people are very sensitive to religion and about their own religion, and so I don't ever want to hurt anyone's feelings or make anyone think I think anything negative about them because of their choices or my choices or whatever. You know what I mean? So I don't know why I felt the need to put a giant disclaimer, but there it is.
Mhm.
um, I just thought that was a really bright comment, though, because I do think so many people, and I've talked to several people, and you have to tiptoe around religion, but I've talked to several people over the years who have been so deeply affected by their religion that they were staying with abusers, and because that's what God wants them to do, they thought. And I said, would any God, any benevolent creator or whatever you want to call it, would they intentionally put you in a position to and require you to stay in a position where you were being horribly abused? Is that what this? No, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so, right? Why even create you then, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's all something. Anyway, we could talk about that for years, but
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, religion when it enters into this is a whole nother level of power and control,
just,
unfortunately, more
yeah,
often than not.
so right. And there's
Yeah.
so much religious abuse as a result. People using
Yeah.
religion to abuse, and that's my main reason for
Mhm.
backing up from organized religion. So,
Right. And here's a comment from Denora who says, "Could you explain reactive abuse and why it's not the same as abuse?" Do you want
yeah.
me to?
So
Okay, go ahead.
well, okay, real quick. So reactive abuse is, well, we know what abuse is, right? So when you react to someone's abuse, you might scream, yell, get upset. If they hit you, you might hit them back. Not that I'm saying you should hit anyone or anyone should hit you, but these are things that happen. Then it's just like if a narcissist attacks you because they think you look fat in your dress and you feel sad about that, and then they get mad at you because you cried, or they attack you because they don't like the dress or the jeans you're wearing, and then you attack them back for always attacking you or for looking fat in their own dress or jeans, or
Mhm.
whatever. Or and that's a very simplified version, but you have to think about it. How often in a relationship with a narcissist or any toxic person do you hold your tongue and you say nothing and you say nothing and you say nothing and then you explode? Has anyone
Mhm.
been there? Because I have done that. And I never hit anyone or anything like that. But I certainly said one time with my ex, I tried to think of the meanest thing I could say to him. And I said he had a big stomach. And I could have said more cutting things, but I was trying to think of a mean physical comment. I don't know why, because I couldn't. I'd already said all the things I thought about his psychology.
Mhm.
I said he had a bad stomach. It's pretty funny. So he wasn't offended at all. He didn't even phase him. But my point is that I said everything in one or two breaths, and all the things I had been holding in for like a year, like there it came out, like,
Mhm.
and that was considered an abusive move because I didn't censor myself at all for about 60 seconds, and then I
Mhm.
of course paid for that for months afterward. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's it. Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah. Yeah, like Angie was saying, reactive abuse, it's a response to abuse. And so
Mhm.
targets, they tend to take it and take it and take it, and they minimize, they justify, they rationalize, They
Mhm.
try to blow it off. This person had a bad day, a bad childhood, a bad week, whatever.
Right.
They're in a bad mood. Maybe I somehow deserved it. And they're getting bullied. They're getting bullied. They're getting bullied. They're getting bullied. And then they get to a point where they finally react to being abused. And
Then they
that reaction,
overreact. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
exactly. It tends
Yeah.
to be that overreaction of they snap and then
Yeah.
they lash out. However, in the eyes of the law, more often than not, reactive abuse is seen as abuse because it is abuse.
Mhm.
So it can be assaultive behavior,
Yes.
like in my friend's case. So and this is why, and all times in domestic violence cases, both people end up going to jail, or both people end up getting charges against them, because by the time one person might have been provoking, and maybe even being physically abusive, but if both people have marks on them,
Mhm.
um, or there's stuff like that, then it's difficult for police to kind of tell what's going on, and they separate both people. So this is why I think it's so important to realize, or to kind of make that the standard of any relationship, that that your mental and physical and emotional health matters, and any relationship that's not conducive to that, it's important to either get that resolved with some sort of assertive behavior or communication, or if that's not possible, to then start getting distance,
Mm.
because putting up with it until you react is not a solution.
Mhm.
That can wind a person in jail. I mean, it can ruin somebody's life. Like I said, my friend, she's now she's a nurse. She has a license. She can't have felony charges and be
Right.
a nurse. So now her career is potentially in danger for this.
Jeez.
And it's 100%, it's her ex who's just continued to exploit and use and manipulate. I mean, it's just the stuff he's done is just absolutely horrific. And
Mhm.
um, but in his mind, he feels entitled to behave that way. So her approach of, well, I just need to, it won't always go on like this, or, oh, he's been fine for the past
Mm.
3 months, or her way of trying to kind of control the environment of being overly accommodating, and, doing all these things to just try to keep the peace because they have kids together.
Mhm.
It works until it doesn't. And then there's situations like this where, um, it catches her so off guard. Like, I really feel like I would have the same response, because it catches her so off guard. His behavior, is so outrageous all of a sudden. And she just is shocked and then just reacts.
Yeah.
So these situations are problematic for, men and women, whoever. If you're in a relationship with the crazy maker, then it's really worth, um, kind of thinking about how to exit from that, either how to get that relationship changed. But
Yep.
more likely than not, it's not going to be able to change, because crazy making behavior is a logical behavior, and it's emotionally immature behavior.
Yep.
And it is impossible to have a rational, logical, mature relationship with somebody who is illogical, irrational, and immature.
Mhm.
You're just not
Yeah.
sharing the same reality. So,
100%. Sorry for the squeaky chair. Yeah, you're right. Um, yeah. Now I have a question from Bonnie here.
okay.
It says, narcissist husband turned my kids against me, grown kids, not sure who's the narcissist anymore, kids or husband. Hanging on by a thread, what now? I mean, I would say probably you're looking at flying monkeys in your children, unfortunately, because I know that you previously had a good relationship with them. So my guess is that he has played enough of the poor me game, the sob story thing with them, and torn you down enough that they're believing him now, and that's why they're acting like that. I think that was maybe even starting to happen 2 years ago, if I remember right, Bonnie. So I would suggest, personally, I would say, you're looking at flying monkeys, and so you're looking at, you're going to have to gray rock. You're going to have to do the thing where you say, if you know me, I didn't do that. If you know what I mean. And then if you have to emotionally step back for a minute, then you do what you need to do as much as you can do without, you know, cutting them off, unless that's what you decide to do. But I don't think you will, knowing who you are. Dana, thoughts?
Yeah. So it's her children have been turned against her.
Yes, her grown adult children. they've got kids, and some of them, I think, have kids of their own. So, or two of them, I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's difficult. Yeah, gray rock. And if they're open to having conversations about certain things, uh, that can help. It's difficult because in abusive, dysfunctional relationships of any kind are crazy making, and everybody, and so the person on the receiving end of that, okay, so you have the very abusive person, and then you have kind of everybody else that's in their inner circle, especially their spouse and their children. The spouse is probably doing their absolute best just to keep things afloat and to keep some semblance of normalcy and a decent family structure. So they're working overtime trying to overcompensate for the problems with the narcissistic person. And however, the children don't have that perspective. So in their mind, it's just mom and dad. They don't see that, more often than not, they don't see that this is deeply dysfunctional or abusive behavior. And because they don't have a good and most people don't have a good understanding of what manipulative behavior is or whatnot, it's easy for them to become manipulated. And it's easy for them to engage in a lot of that dysfunctional thinking as well. Right. So if they're kind of walking around with certain beliefs of, oh, well, family's forever, and, you divorced dad, and therefore you broke the family apart, and this, that, whatever their beliefs are, it's, um, it's kind of like their own, uh, kind of wounded child response. That's definitely not like an adaptive adult mindset. Like an adaptive adult mindset would understand boundaries and standards and deal breakers and kind of what we have control over and what we don't. But kids that grow up in that environment tend to not have that. And um, so, yeah, that can be very difficult. And trying to undo that brainwashing can also be difficult. I think probably your best approach is just going to basically um, validate their feelings of not necessarily the situation. So if they're saying, oh, well, you did this and you hurt, you whatever, you hurt dad, or you did this, to talk about their feelings in the situation, not necessarily the situation itself.
Yeah, like tell them, I understand why you feel that way, for example. And so, or I understand that you feel upset, and that makes total sense to me, but let me explain to you what really is, what's really going on, or from my perspective, or whatever.
Mhm. Or
It's
even like your
helpful.
your former perspective.
Right.
When you guys were kids, these are the actions that I was this is what I did. Right?
Mhm.
This is why I stayed, this is why I behaved this way, because this was my thinking at the time. And it wasn't
Right.
until I learned later on, like that wasn't um that was causing its own issues, that I began doing things different. And my intention was never to hurt you kids or your dad. And it was yeah I was doing the best I could at the time.
Mhm.
And um
Yeah. And
yeah.
I wanted to mention something else. Sorry, Dana, I didn't mean to
Oh
interrupt
yeah, go
again.
ahead.
I think we're delayed a little bit. Darlene mentions also Fleece and her daughter, and blah, blah, blah. So what she means by that, and Darlene, I didn't mean to blah, blah, blah your comment, but she points out that she said, it pained me to think I contributed to that by not getting out soon enough. And I think we can all, any parent who's had children with someone who was a narcissist probably can on some level relate to, I wish I'd gotten out sooner to avoid more damage, right? But don't beat yourself up for it now, because again, that's one of those deals you can't control now. You can't change it. But by, why was I bringing this up? Oh, because in Bonnie's case, that might be part of what you're seeing here as well, the Fleece thing, the inherited habits, if you're dealing with direct insults or any sort of personal negativity, toward yourself, outside of just reacting to the way what he's telling them you're doing and saying and whatever, or how he's treating you. So that's another possibility and we all do pick up little habits like that. I think I've talked before about with my ex would talk he would speak to me in certain ways, certain bullying ways. In hindsight, I realized, and I noticed that right after I left him, I picked up some of those bullying phrases. Like instead of just saying to someone, oh, how come you're late? Saying to someone confrontationally, like, oh, I see you're late. So you must have been out doing something wrong, right? Or not that exactly, but I'm just making that up, so whatever it was. And so I really had to kind of, so almost like I wasn't showing empathy for certain people because of the way that I had been treated. But I just was not verbalizing it properly. Does that make sense? Anyway, yeah. So I also had, and I can't find the thing now, but Bill from the rabbit hole, that's his name, Rabbit Hole Bill. He asked something about BPD that I wanted to touch on. Let me see if he wanted to know if, okay, do people with BPD want supply from people like people with NPD do? And what do you think about that? I think there's some level of that. I mean, I think if we're being honest, on its most basic level, narcissistic supply is validation, right? So I think, yes, I would say that certainly they would want some form of that. But I think also people with BPD tend to have some level of at least emotional empathy and of course cognitive, but maybe not compassionate as much. I'm not sure. Dana, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if you look at narcissistic supply as more of, we all have basic ego needs that need to be met. And if we have trauma that's been present or kind of this kind of unresolved issues that have now turned into vulnerabilities, then we tend to operate more from that place of needing to get our ego needs met. With borderline personality disorder, one of the big ones there is kind of very poor self-image, poor emotional regulation, so extreme moods, and this validation. It's also tends to be kind of this anxious style of attachment where it's this fear, it's a pervasive fear of abandonment. And so that can come across as maybe needing supply from other people, but it's more like they're latching on to other people for dear life. And it's coming from that wounded child place of, if this relationship ends, then I'm going to it's the feeling of I'm going to die without this relationship. And that's an anxious attachment response to things. Whereas like a more like an adaptive adult response is that feeling of, this relationship might end and my God, my world is going to be, my world might
temporarily
feel
devastated.
absolutely devastated. But there's not this feeling that I'm going to die or that I'm lost. Who am I outside of this relationship? It's not that.
Because they know they'll still be able to move on. It'll just suck for a minute.
There's still that sense of self present in an adaptive adult response outside of that relationship. But for BPD, it's the relationships tend to define them, and they hold on to those for dear life. So there's a lot of like major fears of abandonment. Yeah, that's a good question, but that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
And I actually have to run. If you want it, I've got to go move my car before I get a ticket. So I don't know if
I've got to wrap up too. I mean, well, I would normally keep going, but it's I have a client call shortly, so I'm
okay. So then we'll just wrap it up and we'll continue next week.
Yes. Let me say one thing, Dana, really quick. The chat, I didn't realize I was on live chat and I was on top chat and not live chat. They automatically did that to me. So I apologize if I missed anything today, you guys. And Dana, I'm sorry, but we will pick up as many questions as we can in our next session from the chat. So go ahead, Dana.
Yes. Okay. Sounds good. Well, you guys, thank you so much for being here. This is a live stream Angie and I do, or try to do, every Tuesday afternoon around 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Normally goes for about an hour. I don't know, sometimes more, usually more. If you'd like to be notified when we go live, you can type the words Dana Live, all one word, to 22999, or Angie Live. What is
also all one word, to 33222.
33222. Yes. And we alternate channels. Next week we'll be over on Angie's channel, Angie Atkinson on YouTube. And yeah, we'll see you guys then. So feel free to text us questions or leave questions in the comments below, and we'll address them next week.
Thank you, admins.
Okay. Yes.
Moderators.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.